So I have my paper in a portrait orientation right now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my ruler at the bottom of the paper. And I'm going to make a mark at 1/2 inch. So that's right in between the 0 and the 1. I'm then going to shift my ruler over to line up with that mark. And I'm going to make a mark 4 inches in. I'm going to then go to the other side. And now my ruler, my paper isn't exactly 11 inches. So what I'm doing is I'm lining this side up with the 0, and I'm just going to count in from 11. So even though 11 is slightly off the paper, I'm just going to pretend that my paper is exactly 11 inches, and I'm going to make a mark at the 1/2 inch. So just a 1/2 inch in between 11 and 10. I'm then going to move my ruler over and line that mark up with the 4. Oh, I did my measurements off. Okay, sorry, let me start over because I just realized that is way off. Give me 1 second to map this out. 4. Okay. This is going to be better. Okay, I don't hate these measurements anymore. It's like, these are ugly. Okay. So we're going to start over. We're going to go back in time. We're going to line our ruler up at the bottom. And we're going to make a mark at 1 inch. So they're going to be a bit bigger, and that looks better. We're going to move the ruler over and make a mark at 4 inches. Move it over again, and we're going to do a 1 inch. And then go ahead and move it over to that line that we just did and do 4 inches. So we're going to do the same thing at the top. We're going to make a mark at 1 inch. Move the ruler over and line up that mark that we just made. Do 4 inches. Move it over again, do 1 inch. Move it over one last time and do 4 inches. So let's go ahead and connect these. So I'm just going to line up my ruler, and I'm going to lightly, I can't stress lightly enough, connect them. So you can't even see that line. That's how lightly I did it. They say in drawing, draw it light till you get it right. Okay. Now I'm going to turn the paper into a landscape orientation. I'm going to back up a bit. So on this side of the paper, I'm going to line my ruler up with the bottom, and I'm going to make my mark at 1.5 inches. I'm going to slide my ruler down. I'm going to make a mark at 5 inches. I'm going to slide the ruler down again, 1 inch. And one last time to do 5 inches. We're going to do the same thing at the top. So we'll do 1.5 inches, 5 inches, 1 inch, and then 5 inches again. I'll go ahead and connect these. And I'm going to do this very lightly so I'm not having to do too much erasing. Because you guys might notice the Bristol paper does not like to be erased on. It's a little bit harder to erase pencil on it. And so I'm going to go ahead and take a second to erase all these lines that I don't need. So I'm left with just the outline of my boxes. So I am looking for you to erase these lines. If you leave them, they are what I call ghost lines. And that is something I mark down on. Don't want to see any ghost lines. And I'll go ahead and I'm going to outline these in pen so it's easier for you guys to see, and it's also going to give me an opportunity to show you one other thing. So when we're outlining with pen, so you don't have to outline yours in pen. This is technically optional. Your design might look really good outlined in pen, but you technically don't have to do it. So I line my ruler up where I want to draw my line. And then I just set my pen down next to the ruler, and I'm kind of going slow, slightly pushing against the ruler. Always draw towards yourself when working like this. Don't ever draw away from yourself. That's just extremely awkward. If for whatever reason that does work better for you, that's fine. But in general, most people will prefer to draw towards themselves. And for this, I am holding my pen a little bit more perpendicular, a little bit more up and down. So if you choose to outline your piece, you do need to outline it with a ruler and your pen. Don't freehand it because it just doesn't look professional. So now let's say something awful happens. I'm going to do something awful. Okay, are you guys ready? I'm going to let you guys watch this. So We're drawing, we're outlining. And then, oh no, I messed up. Everything is ruined. I have to throw this paper away. No, there is a way to save this, and I'm going to show you how we can fix this. So this method that I'm about to show you only works if you're using Micron. So this will not work if you're using a Sharpie. I have to stand up and look for the thing that I'm looking for. So this only works if you are using Micron, because we're playing on the idea that pigment sits on top of paper. So Sharpie, since it's dye-based, it soaks into the paper. So that's why this won't work with Sharpie, but it will work with pen. And I have gotten this to work with certain paints like watercolor. And the thing is this only works on little areas if you make little mistakes, like I did right there. So that's a little mistake. And then I always say, if you want to use this method that I'm about to show you, always just finish your piece first, because you may end up covering your mistakes. So let's say this boo-boo happened somewhere inside my design. I may end up covering up. So don't do this method until you are done and you know that you're done, because we're going to slightly damage the paper in the process. So if we damage the paper and then try to work on top of it, it's going to look funny. So that's why we want to wait until we're completely done before we do this. So I'm also talking more to stall to let this dry before I actually start doing that. So make sure it's absolutely 100% dry before you try this method. So to do this method for fixing things, we're going to need an eraser. So just your white eraser. I'm going to be using my fancy mechanical eraser just because I like it better, and an X-Acto blade, preferably with a good blade. So make sure that you're changing your blade often so it's nice and sharp. So I lost the lid for this, the cap for it. So what I do is I just turn this right here, take the blade out and turn the blade like that to make sure I don't cut myself. I can't tell you how many times I've cut myself on sharp objects in my studio. So that I always make sure that I turn the blade so that I don't, these are still sharp, these edges, but I'm less likely to cut myself now. Just a good little hack in case you ever lose your lid. So the first thing I'm gonna do, you know, it's really funny. I've been waiting to do this demo with you guys, and I've been waiting for someone to show me a mess up so I can fix it, because I usually will use that person's to like show the class. And then I just realized today I can't do that because we're not in the same classroom. Silly, right? So the first thing you always want to do is just try to erase it with your eraser. Sometimes really light pen will erase, like you'd be surprised. That's not erasing. So now I'm going to go to the next part. I'm going to try to get a little closer so you guys can see. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my X-Acto blade and I'm going to hold it kind of flat to the paper. So I'm not going to actually hold it like flat against the paper. I'm kind of holding it at a slight angle. So if my finger is the paper, we're not going to be able to hold it flat. We're kind of holding it a little up. And what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to flake away the top layer of fiber. And make sure you turn the page to get at different angles. And my blade is dull, so this is a little tricky. Turning it again to get at a different angle. So I'm not digging into the paper. I'm just kind of flaking off that top layer of fiber. So once it gets to about right there, you're going to grab your eraser and erase on top of it. That's looking pretty good. Just going to work on it again a little bit more. There we go. And it's like it was never there. So this technique has saved many drawings and paintings of mine, just because sometimes those little mistakes can really mess everything up. The other thing I want to show you is how to cut something out using your X-Acto knife. So I'm just looking for anything that I can cut as an example. Okay, I'll cut these out. So let me go ahead and back up. So here are some paintings I started that I never finished and will probably never finish. So these are like the first layer. I usually do like 30. And I'm never gonna finish these. Maybe I should. I kind of don't hate these now that, so this is another good example of why you should never throw away your art, is because sometimes you start something and you hate it and then you pull it out 5 years later and you don't hate it anymore. I actually think these are kind of fun. So maybe I'll come back to these. So let's say I finished these and for whatever reason, I wanted to cut them out. So this could pertain to you if, let's say you're working and you make a big mess up or you hate one of your designs and you need to cut them out and remount them to a new piece. So I'm going to show you how to cut it out using your X-Acto blade, which I should try to find a sharp one since the one I have is very dull. So I'm going to be cutting on a piece of cardboard right now, unless I can, oh, I can quickly find my self-healing cutting mat, because I have like 3 of them. So here is a self-healing cutting mat. And let's say I wanted to cut these out and glue them to a new piece of paper for whatever reason. You could cut on a piece of cardboard. I prefer cutting on a self-healing cutting mat because it's a little bit less harsh on my blade. Since you guys are cutting at home, if you're like, I want to cut on my nice kitchen table, my mom doesn't care. Like, that's fine. I'm not, you know, here to tell you how to live your life, but I prefer not to get cut marks on my table. So what you want to make sure that whatever you're cutting on, you see how my self-healing cutting mat's actually smaller than my paper. So I'm kind of turning it in such a way, like at an angle, so that I can make sure that I start on the cutting mat and end on the cutting mat. And honestly, using a cutting mat is a good habit to get into because it teaches you to put something under what you're cutting so you don't just cut on anything. So if you just kind of throw this down and start cutting, you could accidentally have a drawing underneath here and cut your drawing. And I know that you're thinking that is so stupid, like I would never do that. I told this to my class one semester and 2 girls started laughing. And they told me that the one girl did that just yesterday, just kind of threw something down and then did a big cut and cut through one of her drawings. So it could definitely happen. So what I've done is I've marked where I'm going to cut it. So I have a line going kind of right through here. So again, if you've set up your boxes, you're already going to have the lines of where you want to cut. And then one thing to note, it's always going to be easier to cut through the whole paper versus trying to cut out a window. So a lot of students will just be like, oh, I just need to cut out this square. That's actually really tricky. It's a lot easier to just do a cut all the way through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up the ruler so that it goes all the way through the paper. And then I'm going to grab my X-Acto knife. I think this one might be a little sharper. I hope it is. And so again, this is where having, I know I have extra blades somewhere. I just don't know where they are off the top of my head. Let me check one other place. Nope. Oh, I found them. Yes. All right, so here are my extra blades. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this blade out. Put this in. And so now this is another good thing for me to talk about is we have this blade and you have a responsibility to dispose of this blade in a responsible way. So if you just throw this in the garbage, this becomes a hazard for anyone that handles that garbage. So that could be your mom, your brother, your aunt, your uncle, the garbage collector, someone working at the dump or the landfill. This could seriously hurt someone, and it is your responsibility to dispose of it in a responsible manner. So one way that I do it is I have like a little glass jar, and I put all my sharp objects in there when I'm done with them, and they just kind of collect. And then when I'm done with that, I'll tape it up, write sharps on it. Altoid containers, little Altoid containers are good. Another way that you can dispose of these that is decently responsible is to take a piece of tape and wrap tape all around it. So you're essentially making like a giant tape ball around this thing. So this is why, like, I think the Altoid container is great because you could just put all your sharps in an Altoid container, clamp it closed, put tape around it when you're done with a bunch of them. But if you just have one, you make this kind of giant tape ball. And then you, with like a Sharpie or something, write on it, sharp. So that way, if anyone comes in contact with this, they're going to know that there's something sharp inside of this. And this you could throw away, and it's a lot safer. And this is the minimum I would do if you're disposing of a sharp object. So with my brand new blade, this will be a lot easier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line my ruler up with the line that I'm about to cut. I'm going to have good even grip. So you see how much I'm kind of distributing my fingers throughout the piece. I might move them, but this is small enough that I can probably cut through just with this grip. So I have a nice even pressure, good pressure. I'm holding down quite a bit. I don't know if you guys can tell, but I'm actually holding this down quite a bit with my hand. Now with this hand, I'm going to actually do my cut, and I'm not going to be pushing that hard. I'm going to be pushing about as hard as I would with a pencil if I was writing, not super dark, but like confidently, like you're confidently writing with a pencil. So we actually don't want to push too hard with the hand that we're cutting with. And we're not going to go too fast either. So it's not like we're ripping off a Band-Aid. We're going to move very slowly with good even pressure. And the thing is, depending on a few factors, you might not get through in one cut. You're going to have to do what's called scoring, where you do multiple cuts. I usually get through in about 2 cuts, but this is a new blade, so we'll see. So I'm not trying to get through the paper. I did get through the paper though. So let's say I needed to do a second cut. Keep everything the same, don't move. Put your X-Acto blade back at the top and do your second cut. Which I sometimes just do a second cut even if I think I got through, just to make sure that I did. There we go. So that's how you get that beautiful straight cut. So if you use scissors, scissors give you a funky cut. This gives you this beautiful, perfectly straight cut. It does take some practice though. So now I'm gonna put this, this direction to do the cut again. So I'm gonna line my ruler up with where I want my cut to be. I'm gonna have good even pressure holding the ruler down. Make sure your finger is not over the cutting area. Make sure your finger is on the safe side of the ruler. Again, you would think, you know, oh, I'm not gonna cut my finger off. And as someone who has sliced off this much of her finger with an X-Acto blade doing just this, please make sure your finger is on the safe side of the ruler. Also, never work when you are tired or in a rush. Always take your time. All the dangerous mistakes I've made in art have been when I was rushing or when I was tired. So again, I'm not pushing super hard, kind of slightly pushing my blade into the ruler to get that good even cut. There are machines that do this for you. There are guillotines and roto trimmers. I have kind of a kiddie version of a roto trimmer, and I'll show it to you. So, and then I'll talk about why I don't like machines. I mean, I am going to join the machines in the human machine, you know, revolution. But as far as cutting my art, I like cutting my manually. I like doing it myself better just because I trust myself. So this is a little Fiskars cutter. It's kind of used for scrapbooking. I use it for cutting small things sometimes because it's a bit quicker. But the problem is I got this from my old classroom. It's been used by a bunch of students. It's not super accurate. So I know that I know that I'm going to do my measurements correctly. So this right here, what I'm supposed to do is push this up against this edge, which is straight. But since this has been used by so many people, an edge could get worn down so that it's not straight. Also, it has this wire that is supposed to show you where the blade's going to cut. But since I know a bunch of students have used this thing, this wire might not be accurate. It could be bent. So for this one, what I do is I kind of push it up against this top area, and then I'm going to push this down. It has a blade in it, and it cuts. So for small things, this is fine, but I know it has some inaccuracies. And then also, I don't expect you guys to go and buy this, but I just wanted to show it to you in case anyone does do a lot of scrapbooking or a lot of cutting. This is kind of a handy thing to have. And so now I have my pieces separated. I could glue them, or I could let them be kind of free pieces, which is what I'm going to do for these. There are 4 different pieces. I just used one piece of paper to kind of work on them. So